welcome back to State of the Nation. We're still focusing on the anti-corruption treaty that has been signed by Mr. President. Still with me in the studio, Malachi Oluwumadu is a corruption advocate and anti-corruption advocate, and also a lawyer. He's with me in the studios here. We're still expecting to hear from the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Ibrahim Magu, who we're expecting anytime now at Abuja studios. And while we're still focused on that, Mr. Oluwumadu, we do know that the president signed not only the anti-corruption treaty, he also signed the charter for the Lake Chad Basin between Nigeria, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Libya, Niger Republic, and Chad, as well as the African Tax Administration Forum Agreement on Mutual Assistance in Tax Matters. How do we get an interpretation of this?
Well, you would concede that this president, right from the inception of his administration, has made not just a deliberate but conscious effort to galvanize, if you like, the support and cooperation of most African countries on so many fronts, from security to the tax evasion, in which so many individuals and companies are, observed to have perceived some African countries as safe havens. And this agreement, like the one we have dealt with, is in further advancement of those efforts to ensure that as long as these countries are concerned, it will be much easier for the government to relate and deal with those governments in, regarding issues of tax administration generally. And I think that the idea is simple. It is a response to what has become of the mainstay of most African economies, including, particularly the oil revenue. And therefore, if in the international market, we have all witnessed what that product has become in terms of revenue generating resource, then it makes great sense that all of those countries around the Lake Chad Basin will also begin to focus on other sources of revenue, just so to ensure the stability of the continent and the sub-region, as the case may be.
Let's talk more about the anti-corruption treaty.
Yes.
What do you think the hard choices must be if we are to completely fight this corruption war? What should be the hard choices that must be made by, number one, the anti-corruption structures that we have, talking about the EFCC, for instance, the ICPC, PACAC is one also, and civil society organizations that are averse to what corruption has turned this country into. What should be the hard choices that must be made?
Quite a number of them, not just one. I think and I believe that first is to remind the ruling party that it rose to power on the crest of their avowals to deal with corruption headlong. And I think that that is responsible for the kind of excitement that people are already expressing with respect to the very immediate steps that Mr. President has taken soon after his return into the country. Now, once that is put in perspective, then others will follow. And what must follow? It is that irrespective of the maturity he has shown in bringing onto a round table members of the opposition party, it is expected, indeed, that Mr. President has a responsibility under Section 15, subsection 5 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to fight corruption and all forms of abuse of power.
Well, what are people who think that if in the fight of corruption we do not have that kind of arrests and prosecution that is much desired, and if people don't go to jail, possibly even meted the capital punishment, then it would have been an exercise in futility.
I agree with you. Quite frankly, part of the reasons why the anti-corruption fight should be pursued with the vigor and pursued to a logical conclusion is that if it happens effectively in the way and manner it is conceived to operate, it will serve as a deterrent. And how does it work? Where persons, particularly politically exposed persons, whose case are watertight in the sense of the body of evidence against them, are taken not just by the law enforcement agencies, but subjected to the crucibles of law, criminal law for that matter, and ultimately convicted, and ultimately sentenced, and serving their terms in prison, the signals will be clearer than the statements and the promises and the avowals. It will be clear that no matter how highly placed or lowly placed you are, Nigeria has become totally intolerant to issues of corruption. So I concede and agree that where you have a full throttle mechanisms effectively in place to ensure that people are not just identified or alleged to have been corrupt, but they are investigated and prosecuted and convicted and sentenced, that will serve as a serious deterrent. What has become the norm, for which many people have been very uncomfortable, is that we all know that this country is sinking under the weight of corruption, yet the impunity with which they commit the transgression and get scot-free has become very disconcerting for Nigerian
That's a good place to anchor. I want to thank you so much indeed, Malaki Ogumadu. He's an anti-corruption advocate as well as a lawyer. Many thanks indeed for talking to us on State of the Nation. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the acting chairman of the EFCC, Ibrahim Magu, to speak to us on this very troubling issue. Now, 22,000 deaths, that's the casualty figure for malaria in Kano State in 2015. And now the state government says it's determined to lower the risk of malaria infection across the 44 local government areas of the state with mosquito control mechanism.
One of the leading causes of death in Kano State, northwest Nigeria, is malaria. The state has recorded over 22,000 deaths in 2015, and the number has continued to increase. The state government wants to reduce the death from malaria and other diseases through quality health care to citizens and other intervention projects.
We've already launched the mosquito control fogging machines, which we demonstrated physically. We urge you to make the best use of these machines so that we control mosquitoes in order to control malaria in Kano State.
Other measures include the recruitment and training of hospital personnel to cater to the medical needs of the people.
Distribution of offer of employment to 2,458 healthcare workers employed by the state. Launching of operational guidelines for implementing drugs revolving fund scheme, which is a scheme that is meant to ensure availability of safe, adequate, and quality drugs in our healthcare facilities. We are also today witnessing the distribution of anti-malarial commodities, including drugs that we popularly call ACTs, artemisinin combination therapy drugs.
And there is more, as the state government distributes mosquito-controlled machines to be used in hospitals across the 44 local government areas, while mobility aid is provided to physically challenged indigents.
And that wraps it up on State of the Nation. I want to thank you so much indeed for watching. I am Gimba Umar. Join us again, same time next week for a fresh package. Until then, have a splendid day. Bye for now.